Atheism and secularism are not the same thing. I'm going to repeat that. Atheism and secularism are not the same thing. And the third time, atheism and secularism are not the same thing. Okay, so this is something that has come up on a forum that I often contribute to, the British and Global Muslims for Secular Democracy. And the whole reason I joined that forum about 10 years ago was because I wanted to support an initiative led by British Muslims to combat the problem of Islamic extremism, as well as counter anti Muslim bigotry. Notice I said anti Muslim bigotry, I do not accept the term Islamophobia, um, because I feel it's weaponized to try and trample legitimate criticism of said extremism. So I'm going to break this down, and to me, it's really not that complicated, but apparently some people have a problem understanding this. And it tends to be certain religious people, not just Muslims, some Christians do this. They attack secularism because they think it promotes atheism or it promotes it promotes favoritism to atheism. That's not the case. Um, Now, I'm not going to deny that there are atheists who take quite a hardline view, and if it was up to them, all religions would be just abolished. They hate religion, and they would like to see it completely abolished, and people couldn't practice their faith. But that's a minority. That sort of thinking, I don't think it would ever work. But that's not the situation with secularism, at least with healthy secularism. Um, when we think of communist states such as China, that are known for subjugating faith groups, to hold that up as an example of secularism is as ridiculous as the previous video I made holding up Hitler as an example of democracy. What the Chinese communist system is, and other communist systems, is extreme anti-religion. They see religious groups as a threat to their existence. I mean, in the case of China, it's estimated that there may actually be more Chinese Christians than members of the Communist Party. About 90 million members of the Communist Party. Some estimate at least 100 million Chinese Christians, particularly in the south. So they see it as a threat. That's why the CCP is so nervous about Christianity. And they can't do with Christians what they've done with Falun Gong because there's simply too many Christians. They can't just torture all 100 million people. But this is something people need to understand. Let's understand these terms very, very clearly. Atheism. Atheism is the simple belief that there is no higher deity. It's a rejection of organized religion, and it's a way of saying, no, there is no greater God, there's no greater destiny. What we have is science, we have life on earth, and we work with that. Some atheists are happy to just believe that and get on with their lives, and some atheists, in my opinion, are a little bit um, self-righteous and arrogant, just as much as some people of faith. I don't entirely agree with the atheist viewpoint. I'm not an atheist myself, but generally speaking, atheists are tolerant for the most part. Um, Now, theocrats, that is, those who want us to live under a theocracy, they seem to think that because atheists can have a voice in a secular system, that somehow equates to secularism favoring atheism. But secularism is not atheism. Secularism is simply insisting that there is a separation between the state and between organized religion in order to ensure that no religion can dictate to the rest of us. Now, in the United Kingdom, Christianity is the dominant religion, but it's been in decline in recent years. The number of practicing Christians has significantly dropped. It's a bit higher with Catholics ever since Pope Benedict XVI's visit. I believe it was in 2013, or well, it would have been before Pope Francis to Glasgow. So that kind of reignited. I think it was 2010. 2010 it was. Yeah, that kind of apparently reignited Catholic numbers in the UK. Um, the number of atheists in the UK is probably a lot higher than the United States, but that doesn't mean we're an atheist state. And many European countries now have quite a large atheist population. But that doesn't mean that they're anti-religion. So, for example, some of the Nordic states where atheism is quite high, it doesn't mean that Christians and Muslims are not allowed to worship. So I think it's a fallacy to try and promote this idea that secularism equates to atheist supremacy. And actually, just for the record, if there ever was a situation where atheists, or let's say a particular group of hardline atheists, got into a position apart and they said from now on all religions are banned, I would be 100% against that because it would be no better than communism. But that's never going to happen in our society. Why? Because there's just too many people of faith, or too many people who would say that's a totalitarian move. So it wouldn't happen. So those atheists out there who say they hate religion and they want it all banned from the face of the earth, well, good luck. It's never going to happen. That's where I differ with that sort of atheist thinking, because firstly, I think it's wishful thinking. Even if it was the right move, which I don't believe it is, it would be practically impossible. It would just be practically impossible. I've had this debate with some atheists, and it's even if they find some justification for it, how do you ban religion? Because you just have Christians and Muslims, reading their Bibles and Qurans indoors. How would you? You can't just abolish religion. So I think that's a pretty ridiculous position, and some atheists have it. But secularism actually protects religious freedom. Secularism actually says, well, you can practice your faith as long as you're not imposing on other people, and it protects all religions because it doesn't allow a single religion to dominate in the sense of saying we're the dominant religion, so the rest of you are outlawed. So, for example, in this country, the dominant religion is Christianity, but that doesn't mean Jews and Hindus and Buddhists and Muslims cannot practice their faith. I mean, obviously, right now there's lockdown, places of worship are closed, but that's not stopping people of faith worshipping from home, having prayers in their homes, and even doing. I've seen, for example, some Church of England vicars are doing services online. They're keeping the social distance. They're abiding by the regulations. I just think it's a false argument by some religious types to try and equate secularism with atheist supremacy. To me, healthy secularism is a situation where you say you cannot impose religious dogma on the rest of the population. If, for example, you oppose gay marriage, you can have your opinion on that. You have freedom of expression. You could say you believe it's immoral. What you can't do is say to homosexual people, you have less rights than we do, and use religious dogma to take away the rights. That's why there's been an increasing amount of legislation that address equality for LGBT people, and rightly so. Um, so I think I don't want to make a moral equivalency and say that militant atheists have pose the same sort of intolerance as religious hardliners, because militant atheists are, killing people en masse in violent terrorist attacks and in other such situations. But one could argue that the Chinese Communist state is an example of extreme atheism because it's vocally anti-religion. I mean, officially, Christianity, Islam, Fiqh, Buddhism, and traditional Chinese religions are permitted in China, but in reality, there is heavy subjugation, both of Christians and of Muslims, as we know from the Xinjiang concentration camps, which is appalling, absolutely appalling. So I think some theocrats think of secularism as being the same as what goes on in China. It really, really isn't. I endorse a situation where there is healthy secularism that benefits everyone. It benefits people of faith because they're allowed to practice their faith, and it benefits atheists because they're allowed to express their dislike of faith. Although, actually, one could argue that these days they are often accused of bigotry because they say they dislike Islamic dogma. That's not the same as hating Muslims. So, actually, in some ways, our system might even be more favorable to faith groups. I know the National Humane Society, for example, are not happy with our current situation. There's a lot of things they would like to see changed. Although I would point out to them that the situation in the United Kingdom is in no way comparable to the situation in theocracies. So I think they're a little bit, I don't want to say over the top, but I do think it would be useful for them to look at international comparisons. And I really think that, if anything, the problem in the UK is we are far too placating to certain faith groups. For example, I would say we are far too placating to Islam, quite frankly, because recently there was this the situation with the Conservative Party. They were accused of Islamophobia. Now, my question is that because some Tories have criticised Islamic extremism, or is it because some Tories have expressed genuine bigotry towards Muslim people? If it's the latter, that needs to be investigated. But if it's the former, that should be absolutely allowed. And what the religious need to understand is that in a secular system, re- criticism of religion is allowed. If you don't like that, then go and live under a theocracy, because criticism of religion is not the same as persecuting religion. It just isn't.